Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, today we're talking about the one and only turbo coin, ladies and gentlemen. I'm super happy to talk about this coin specifically about today because, ladies and gentlemen, it is absolutely destroying the markets, and I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. Before we do, ladies and gentlemen, look, 111,500 followers. We can see that we're actually climbing very quick, right? We can see that Turbo is gaining momentum even on Twitter. That is what we like to see. Even the posts are getting a higher average too. That is what we like to see. Obviously, this is like minimal stuff, but it is still a metric that I still like to follow. Listen, the reason why I'm so hyped is because, ladies and gentlemen, we are almost in the top 100. We are 129th, right? We are sitting at 377 million market cap with 200 million volume, okay? 200 million volume. But that's not even the most impressive thing. The most impressive thing is actually we are holding super well when, a lot of coins sold off on Friday, including Bitcoin, right? So over here, we can see that it says Friday, right? From there until this current price we're at right now, we have dropped roughly, 9%, right? And that's still being generous, right? Because it's a little bit, it's like 8.5, but 8.5, 9%. And the crazy thing is, ladies and gentlemen, something like Bitcoin, if we compare it to Bitcoin very quickly, right? Roughly the same time, Friday, right? Around the same time, over here to here, Bitcoin is down practically 4%. So we're down a little bit more than half of what Bitcoin is down. But you have to realize, in the context of an altcoin, in the context of a meme coin, that is actually really good. Okay. We are practically going pound for pound with Bitcoin. You got to remember something like Turbo, right? Like I said, not only is it an altcoin, so it's always going to, have a bigger pump and sell off compared to Bitcoin, but it is also a meme coin. So hypothetically, if something is supposed to go down, let's say Bitcoin goes down 5%, altcoins are supposed to go down like, 10, 11%. Meme coins usually go down like 15% or more even. That is just the reality, right? Because meme coins are a double-edged sword, but we are actually holding really well compared to Bitcoin. So even if, ladies and gentlemen, Bitcoin does come back down to sweep these areas before it goes back up, right? Take some kind of liquidity sweep, let's just say some kind of sideways movement before we go back up. That would be an additional, let's see, what? Not even 3%, but we're going to say 3% for simplicity's sake. So that would be what? Another 5-6% drop for Turbo if we're going to be holding the way we're holding, right? If we just use the same type of ratios. Now, I know, you can't always use the same type of ratios, but it is still a metric. And look, even if we were to drop 10%, that is still at 0.00487. Look how well we are holding and ranging, right? We are literally, creating higher lows every single day, right? Boom, boom, and boom, right? It is looking fantastic. Yes, we cannot break through, but that's okay, because if we kind of stay here, struggle, and go sideways, and then when Bitcoin says, you know what, Bitcoin's going to pump to 100K, 102K, 105K, right? More money is going to be pumped into altcoins. That is when we are going to burst up, ladies and gentlemen. Another reason is also because of Turbo's beautiful technical analysis, right? We talked about how there is almost no real support and resistance up from starting from 0.00442 to roughly 0.008, right? Sure, there's a little bit of support and resistance a little bit lower, but it doesn't, the way the markets work, they don't literally just stop perfectly. They usually go a little bit higher before they start exhausting and see some type of retracement. So this range of these two marks are practically saying, hey, once we kind of are chilling in the zone, right? We chill in the zone, we respect the zone. Once we go up, we're going to go up flying really high. Like, that is the reality, right? We should, once we have the green light from the market, go up easily 50%. And, if we do see some type of retracement even down here, right, we'll go up by 75% in a very short, span. And, this coin, say what you want. I know some people have been hating on this coin for like a year now. This coin is inevitable that it will do wonders in this market, in this cycle. I'm super, super happy to be part of the Turbo community, and you should be too, right? You should be too, right? In case there are bigger drops, which I don't really think we'll get very, very massive drops if we continue to dominate the way we dominate, then, we could see potential buying opportunities roughly at 0.0043, right? That is going to be down 20%. I really doubt we're going to come back to these very big key levels unless there's a very, very big surprise with Bitcoin. Maybe if I were wrong about the Bitcoin sentiment, right? Where we hold this massive, 90K, 91K line, because this is very important, right? We should not really be going back down, to any of these levels all the way down here for Bitcoin. Like we should really not be going back down to 85K or especially these lower lows of like 79K. Okay, we really shouldn't. And that's because we are already above the main biggest support and resistance we've had in months, right? Before that, it was this one over here where we kind of went diagonally, right? We can see we broke up, and once we kind of broke up from here, right, we shot up, went down for a final retest, and we shot up, right? But you got to remember, we were consolidating here for roughly, like 7.5 months. So this zone, right, this zone was kind of a crazy zone. But we can see once we broke out, there was no going back. That was the biggest support and resistance we've seen in a while. So this is the second biggest one. So I really, really doubt we would come back to these kind of levels. In fact, if we were to go back down to like 80K or even 84K, I would be actually a little bit concerned because I do believe that, we are looking to be shooting up. That April, May, June are the recovery candles for Bitcoin and many, many altcoins, right? So, exciting times ahead. If you were to ask me, well, should I buy Turbo right now or should I wait for a dip? I would say, you know what? You have to make your own choice. Obviously, I'm not a financial advisor, but ultimately, at the end of the day, right? Where do you think this coin is going to go? Because if you think this coin is going to go to something like, let's just say 10 billion market cap, a roughly 30x from here, then you can be like, yeah, I'm okay with buying here, right? It's a 30x, right? We're aiming for 30x. Does it mean you're guaranteed going to hit it? No, not necessarily. Is there a good probability we'll hit 10 billion market cap? Yes, I do believe so. So, that's what you have to be asking yourself. If you want to be looking for a dip or a pullback, right, on the smaller scale, where we still technically won't break, any type of structure, you could see this 12% dip at 0.0048, right? Because these are the zones that are creating the higher lows. So one low, second low, another low. So, if we do pull back, we might go here before we officially finally break out, right? However, I will say if we consistently fail, then that does also create a decent chance of, breaking structure and going lower, especially if Bitcoin breaks. But at this current moment, it seems like there's just so much like firepower, so much money being pumped into this coin. I mean, we are literally almost in the top 100 by just holding our own. A lot of coins are falling off, and it is why we're climbing the ranks, right? We're 129th. We're almost in the top 100. And it's crazy to think when we were at our bottoms, we were almost in the top 300. But man, we have resurrected. We talked about back then how, big institutions like Coinbase and Binance and all these other big boys were actually accumulating Turbo, right? We talked about it. So if you follow the money, then you follow the big money, you just win. That is just how life works. And, in the last video, I talked about how Turbo is getting manipulated in a good way. And that's exactly what you want. The whole market is manipulated. That is just the reality, right? But there's very, very good manipulation. There's bad manipulation. And when there's no manipulation, usually that means your coin won't last and there's not that much longevity. But what I see is big institutional money, big plays, right? Some of the highest market cap consistently in the last 24 hours. Even if we compare it to some of the boys we talk about on this channel, let's say Brett, right? Brett, way higher market cap, way lower volume, right? Something like Toshi, right? Half the market cap, way lower volume for the ratio. When we talk about something like ICP, right? They literally have billions in market cap, way lower volume. We could go to something like Caspa. I love Caspa. There was a battle between Caspa and Turbo before. Unnecessarily battle. They're two different coins and two different type of ecosystems. They both can coexist. But we can see 50 million volume with a 2.4 billion market cap, right? Turbo literally has almost 9 to 10 times less the amount of market cap, but his volume is roughly 4 times more than Caspa's current one. So, it's just looking great, people. It is just looking so fantastic. No new official updates from Turbo themselves. Guys, highly recommend for you to join the Discord community, especially if you want a portfolio review and quick updates. We are doing a 2.0 rework, which will be officially live within the next 48 hours. That is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.